They call me a loser. The guy who married for money. The kept man living in the shadow of a dynasty he wasn't born into. More than anything, I'm the impotent husband of Isabel Sterling, the most beautiful and powerful CEO in Westlake City. On my wedding day, I became the punchline to a citywide joke. But they don't know about the nights. They don't see the way the Ice Queen, my wife, watches over me while I sleep, her eyes red-rimmed and lost. They have no idea that a storm is brewing inside my body, a change that will rewrite everything they think they know about me. Useless. The voice, sharp as a needle, pierced the murmur of the reception hall. I looked up and met the gaze of my new mother-in-law, Victoria Sterling. Contempt was etched into every line of her perfectly made-up face. Today was my wedding. Mine and Isabel Sterling's, the business world's reigning queen. But I, Leo Vance, felt less like a groom and more like a prisoner on public display. Below the dais, the city's elite were all here. Their stares were like 1,000 tiny knives, flaying me alive. Did you hear? He saved her, but steel beam crushed. You know, he's completely broken. Jesus, the Sterlings really brought a eunuch into the family. Poor Isabel, so beautiful. She signed up for a life without a husband, at least in the biblical sense. The whispers found me, every last one. My face remained a mask of indifference, but my hands, hidden from view, clenched into fists. 3 months ago, a crane collapsed at a Sterling Industries construction site. Isabel was trapped beneath a tangle of rebar and twisted steel. I was the only ex-Special Forces operator on the security team, the only one crazy enough to go in. I pulled her from the jaws of death. The price was a falling plate of steel that hit me just right, or just wrong. The doctors handed me a life sentence. I'd lost the one thing that defined a man. To repay their debt of honor, and to quiet the inevitable media storm, Isabel's grandfather, Arthur Sterling, made the decision. She would marry me. Leo, are you even listening to me? Victoria's voice sharpened, snapping me back. My daughter is a princess. Marrying her is the highlight of your miserable life, a blessing you don't deserve. From now on, you will remember your place. You will speak when spoken to, you will work, and you will not, under any circumstances, embarrass my daughter. I looked at her, my voice level. I understand, ma'am. Calling her ma'am made her face twist in disgust. Don't you dare call me that. I'm Mrs. Sterling to you. I could never be a mother to something so worthless. Beside me, Isabel had been a statue of ice the entire time. Dressed in a stunning white gown, she was surreally beautiful and just as cold. Now she moved. Her voice, though quiet, cut through the tension. Mother, that's enough. Grandfather arranged this marriage. You planned this wedding. Let's just get through it. There was an authority in her tone that no one could argue with. Victoria's face cycled through a series of furious expressions before she clamped her mouth shut. We exchanged rings. We made the toasts. I was a puppet, my face blank through it all. Only I knew that deep in my gut, a faint warmth had begun to swirl. It came from a strange, pearl-like object I'd accidentally swallowed during my last mission in the military, something I'd recovered from a classified archaeological dig. It had lain dormant for 3 years. Today, for the first time, it was waking up. Just then, the grand ballroom doors swung open. A man in a crisp white suit, devastatingly handsome, strode in. He carried a large, elegantly wrapped gift box, a playful smirk on his face. So sorry I'm late. Isabel, my love, congratulations. It was Caleb Thorne, heir to the Thorne family fortune and Isabel's most persistent suitor. Every head in the room turned. I knew the real show was about to begin. Caleb's arrival was like a splash of water on a grease fire. The room erupted. It's Caleb Thorne. This is going to be good. Everyone knows he's been chasing Isabel for years. You think he's just going to let her marry this nobody? The moment Victoria saw him, her venomous expression melted into a sycophantic smile. Caleb, dear boy, you came. You've made my day. Caleb ignored her, his eyes fixed on Isabel and me. He scanned my body with blatant disdain, his gaze lingering below my waist before his lips curled into a mocking sneer. And you must be the family's great hero, Mr. Leo Vance. He drew out the word hero like it was a dirty word. I've heard so much about you. To sacrifice the most important part of yourself for Isabel. It's truly admirable. The cronies behind him snickered. I just watched him like he was a clown performing a tired act. My placid stare seemed to unnerve him. He held up the gift box. Isabel, I know your passion for rare art. This is a recently discovered sketch by Picasso, an early study for one of his masterworks. I acquired it at a private auction in Geneva. $80 million. A small token for your wedding. A collective gasp went through the crowd. $80 million. Every eye in the room swiveled from Caleb to me, the groom who had nothing. The score in their looks was a physical weight. Victoria's eyes were practically glowing with greed. Oh, Caleb, you shouldn't have. Your affection for our Isabel can't be compared to... Well, to him. She shot me a look of pure hatred. Isabel's expression turned arctic. Caleb, I appreciate the thought, but please take your gift back. Leo and I are married. I'd ask you to show some respect. Respect? Caleb laughed, as if she'd told the joke of the century. Isabel, you want me to respect a man who isn't even a man? Are you trying to humiliate me? Or yourself? The words were poison. Isabel flinched, her face turning pale. I took a step forward, shielding her. My business is none of your concern, I said quietly. The warmth inside me was spinning faster now. Caleb sneered, about to retort. Suddenly, help! It's Mr. Sterling. He's not breathing. A butler scrambled out from a private room at the back of the hall, his face a mask of terror. The party dissolved into chaos. Isabel's face went white. She hiked up her wedding dress and ran. Victoria shrieked and followed. I was right behind them. Arthur Sterling was the bedrock of his family, and the only person who had shown me genuine kindness. He had a severe heart condition, kept at bay only by a cocktail of experimental drugs. When we burst into the room, the family doctor was performing CPR. On the heart monitor, a flat green line droned its single final note. It's no use, the doctor said, sweat pouring down his face. His heart has stopped. I'm sorry. You should prepare yourselves. No, Grandpa. Isabel let out a choked cry and crumpled. Victoria began to wail hysterically. In the midst of the pandemonium, I pushed through to the bedside. Arthur's face was ashen. On a bizarre impulse, I reached out and took his cold, limp wrist. The second my skin touched his, the restless warmth inside me found an outlet. It surged from my body, a torrent of energy flowing through my arm and into the old man. Time seemed to freeze. I could feel the mysterious energy, vibrant with life, pouring into Arthur Sterling's body. It was like watching a dead tree blossom in winter. Beep, 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 beep. The monitor, which had been flatlining, let out a faint, hesitant chirp. The deadly green line began to twitch. It's moving, the doctor yelled, his voice trembling. He pointed at the screen, his eyes wide. A heartbeat. He has a heartbeat. My God. Everyone's attention snapped from the old man to the machine. The weak, flickering line was growing stronger, more rhythmic with every passing second. Cough, cough, cough. On the bed, Arthur Sterling, a man who had been clinically dead moments before, began to cough violently. A hint of color returned to his gray face. Grandpa, Isabel, overjoyed, threw herself at his bedside, grabbing his other hand as tears streamed down her face. Victoria stopped her wailing, staring in stunned disbelief. It's a miracle. This is a medical miracle. The doctor was babbling, beside himself. In 30 years of practice, he'd never seen anything like it. A dead man, coming back to life on his own. He frantically checked Arthur's vitals, growing more astounded by the second. Blood pressure stabilizing. Heart rate normal. Breathing steady. How was this possible? No one noticed me. As the room celebrated the impossible, I quietly let go of Arthur's wrist and melted back into the corner of the room. The warmth inside me was mostly gone, leaving me feeling drained. But my mind was reeling. That bead, it could do this? It wasn't just healing me. It could literally bring someone back from the dead. It was luck. Just dumb luck. Dad is a fighter. He pulled through on his own. Victoria was the first to find a rational explanation for the inexplicable. Yes, that must be it, the guest chimed in. Believing in a fluke was far easier than believing the useless son-in-law had performed a miracle. Only Isabel, after her initial elation faded, looked through the crowd. Her cool, intelligent eyes, filled with a deep-seated question, found me in the corner. A moment ago, she thought she'd seen Leo holding her grandfather's hand. Was she mistaken? I met her gaze and gave her a simple, unassuming smile. I tapped my head. I learned a bit of combat first aid in the service. Must have hit a pressure point or something. Guess it worked. The explanation was laughably flimsy. But in that moment, it was the only one that made any sense. The suspicion in Isabel's eyes deepened. First aid? What kind of first aid could restart a dead man's heart? This man, she realized, was full of secrets. The wedding reception ended abruptly. Back in the lavish suite that was now technically ours, Isabel took a black card from her purse and held it out to me. Her voice was as cold as ever. There's $10 million on this. The pin is 6 zeros. Take it, leave the Sterling family, and go live your own life. Consider my family's debt to you paid in full. $10 million. A fortune to any normal person. For a loser like me, it was enough to live comfortably for the rest of my days. If Victoria knew her daughter was offering me this much, she'd have an aneurysm. I just stared at the card, making no move to take it. Isabel's brow furrowed. Not enough. I shook my head. Why? For the first time, a flicker of genuine confusion crossed her face. Because we're married, I said, looking her directly in the eye. I'm your husband, and this is my home. Isabel was stunned. She had prepared for every other possibility. That I would snatch the card and leave, babbling with gratitude. That I would be greedy and demand more. She never imagined I would refuse. And for those reasons. Husband. Home. The words, coming from my mouth, felt absurd. And yet, they stirred something inside her she couldn't name. Leo, you don't have to do this, she said, her tone softening slightly. I know you feel wronged. Don't listen to my mother. This marriage isn't fair to either of us. We can't. I interrupted, my gaze unwavering. I like it here. I interrupted, my gaze unwavering. You saved my life once, Isabel. I'm going to protect yours for the rest of it. From now on, your problems are my problems. She was speechless. Her cool, composed eyes, which had faced down corporate raiders and hostile takeovers, were now filled with a flicker of panic. This man was nothing like the weak, greedy, pathetic figure she had imagined. His eyes were calm, but they held an unshakable resolve, as if every word he spoke was a solemn vow. You. She opened her mouth, but nothing came out. She turned and disappeared into the master bathroom. That night, we slept in separate beds. I lay on a thin mattress on the floor, but my mind was wide awake. I closed my eyes and focused inward on my lower abdomen. The warm current, which had been reduced to a trickle after saving Arthur, was slowly regenerating. And as it did, it felt purer, more potent than before. I tried to guide the flow of energy toward the area of my injury, the place where doctors said everything was dead tissue and severed nerves. As the warmth washed over it, a tingling, itching sensation spread through me. It was working. A jolt of pure joy shot through me. The doctors had said the damage was irreversible, but this mysterious energy was reawakening my body, cell by cell. The process was slow, but it was happening. I saw a path forward. If I kept this up, I wouldn't just be healed. I'd be stronger than I ever was before. The next morning, bang, 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 violent knocking rattled the door, followed by Victoria's shriek. Open this door. Isabel. Leo. Get out here now. I opened my eyes. Isabel, already awake and furious, stalked to the door and threw it open. Victoria stormed in, flanked by 2 maids. Her eyes darted around the room, landing on the perfectly made bed where Isabel had slept, and then on my makeshift bed on the floor. A flicker of confusion crossed her face, quickly replaced by a sneer of vindicated disgust. I knew it, she screeched. A eunuch can't perform his husbandly duties. Isabel, do you see now? This waste of space can never give you what you need. Divorce him immediately. She had clearly come expecting to find evidence that our marriage was a sham, grounds to have it annulled. Isabel's face was a mask of cold fury. Mother, this is my room. Please get out. Victoria was momentarily speechless. Then her eyes landed on me. You parasite. You live in my house. You eat my food. The least you can do is make yourself useful. Arthur's prized orchid, the ghost orchid, is dying. Go fix it. If you can't save that plant, you can pack your bags and get out of my sight for good. With that, she swept out of the room. Isabel's expression was grim. Everyone knew that orchid was her grandfather's pride and joy, a one-of-a-kind specimen worth a fortune. But lately, for no apparent reason, it had started to wither. They'd brought in the best botanists in the state, and none of them could save it. Asking a complete amateur to save a dying plant? This wasn't a task. It was a setup, an excuse to throw me out. Don't listen to her, Isabel said, her voice like ice. I'll handle it. I looked at her tense profile. I knew what handling it meant. A screaming match with her mother, or trying to secretly buy a replacement. Neither would work. Victoria just wanted me gone. It's okay, I said with an easy smile. I'll go take a look. She stared at me, surprised. You know about orchids? Not a thing, I said, shaking my head. But I'm a fast learner. I walked out of the room, leaving her watching my back with a complex expression. She was beginning to realize she didn't know the first thing about her new husband. He was always so calm, so unshaken, no matter the insult or the impossible task thrown at him. It wasn't the posture of a desperate man living on the charity of a wealthy family. I found a greenhouse in the back garden. Inside, an old gardener was sighing at a plant on a pedestal. Its leaves were yellow and wilted, its roots looked rotten, and its buds were drooping. This had to be the million-dollar ghost orchid. Can I help you, son? The gardener asked, looking up. I'm Leo Vance. Oh, you're... His expression shifted to a strange mix of pity and scorn. Her ladyship sent you to save this flower? I nodded. The gardener sighed and shook his head. It's no use. The rot's in the roots. God himself couldn't save it now. She's just setting you up to fail, son. Let me try. I didn't explain. I walked over to the orchid and knelt down, gently touching one of its dying leaves. I closed my eyes and summoned the trickle of warmth inside me, carefully guiding it through my fingertips and into the plant's veins. The energy was like a spring of pure life. It flowed down through the leaves and into the decaying roots. I could feel it happening, the gentle power cleansing the rot, repairing the withered cells, breathing life back into the dying tissue. It was much easier than healing a person, and it used far less energy. The old gardener watched me for a moment, saw me just kneeling there with my eyes closed, and shook his head, assuming I was putting on a show before walking away. I ignored him, lost in the strange and wonderful sensation, until the warmth inside me was gone again. I opened my eyes. Outwardly, the plant looked no different, but I knew its roots were alive. The rest was just a matter of time. Just then, a contemptuous voice echoed from the doorway. Well, if it isn't the Sterling family's great hero. Change careers? You're a gardener now. I turned. It was Caleb Thorne again. Behind him, several of his lackeys held a massive funeral wreath, woven from funereal white lilies. He slammed the wreath on the floor. I heard Arthur's favorite flower was on its last legs. I brought this to express my condolences in advance. You'd better work fast, Leo. If that thing dies, I doubt Grandpa Sterling will want to keep his new son-in-law around. His face was a mask of smug satisfaction. He was here to gloat. He was still furious that Arthur's miraculous recovery had ruined his wedding day spectacle. When he'd heard about Victoria's impossible demand, he'd rushed right over with the funeral wreath. This wasn't just a taunt, it was a curse. On behalf of the orchid, I thank you for your concern, I said, standing up and brushing the dirt from my hands. Ha! Caleb roared with laughter. Leo, you really think you're something, don't you? You're a leech, a nobody. Do you honestly believe you can save this plant? Stop dreaming. He pointed at the orchid. Look at it. The leaves are yellow. The roots are rotten. A team of gods couldn't save it. And you're here pretending you can? His friends chimed in. He's a con artist, mister. Thorne, I bet he can't even tell a weed from a flower. I ignored them and looked directly at Caleb. Tomorrow, it will bloom. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried through the sudden silence of the greenhouse. Caleb's smile froze on his face. His friends stopped laughing. A few seconds later, he burst into an even louder, more hysterical fit of laughter. Bloom? Ha! Leo, did that steel beam scramble your brains too? This plant is dead. You say it's going to bloom tomorrow? Tell you what, if you can make this thing bloom by tomorrow, I will eat this entire wreath of lilies, right here on the spot. He was utterly certain I was talking nonsense. Even a healthy orchid couldn't be forced to bloom on command, let alone a dying one. All right, I nodded. I'll be waiting. Without another glance at him, I walked out of the greenhouse, leaving him and his cronies staring after me like I was a lunatic. He's insane. Absolutely insane, Caleb muttered. But for some reason, a tiny seed of doubt had been planted in his mind. There was something about Leo Vance's unnerving calm that he couldn't shake. The next morning, the old gardener was the first to arrive at the greenhouse, as always. He came prepared to dispose of the ghost orchid's remains. But when he pushed open the door and saw the plant on its pedestal, he froze. The watering can slipped from his fingers and clattered to the stone floor. He rubbed his eyes, convinced he was hallucinating. The orchid that had been withered and dying just yesterday was now utterly transformed. Its leaves were a vibrant, healthy green, glistening in the morning light. And nestled among them, several elegant, pristine white flowers had opened, their petals like sculpted silk. They stood proud and perfect, radiant in the dawn. How was this possible? The gardener reached out a trembling hand, wanting to touch the petals, but afraid to disturb what could only be a divine act. It bloomed. It really bloomed, he shouted, his voice filled with ecstatic disbelief. His cry brought the whole house running. Victoria, Isabel, and even Arthur Sterling, who was up and about, all rushed to the greenhouse. When they saw the orchid, now in full, magnificent bloom, their faces mirrored the gardener's. Shock, awe, utter bewilderment. My God, it's a miracle, a true miracle, Victoria whispered, her hand over her mouth. Arthur Sterling was so moved he had tears in his eyes. He rushed forward to examine the plant. It's alive. It's really alive. It's more beautiful than it ever was. Only Isabel wasn't looking at the flower. Her eyes were scanning the crowd, searching for one person, Leo Vance. It was him again. Could this really be a coincidence? Just then, a familiar, arrogant voice cut through the air. I have to see this for myself. What kind of magician can bring a dead flower back to life? Caleb Thorne strode in, followed by a middle-aged man in a tweed jacket and gold-rimmed glasses who looked like a university professor. Caleb was convinced I had used some kind of trick. So today he brought Dr. Alastair Finch, the most famous botanist in the state, to expose my fraud. I've got it figured out, Caleb announced, pointing a finger at me. You swapped the plant, didn't you? Slipped in a healthy one when no one was looking. Well, the jig is up, Vance. Your little con is over. Caleb was practically vibrating with smug confidence. Dr. Finch was the ultimate authority. One word from him, and I'd be exposed as a fraud and thrown out of the Sterling mansion in disgrace. He swapped it. Victoria latched on to the idea instantly. Of course. That has to be it. I knew a loser like you couldn't possibly have saved it. Leo Vance, how dare you try to deceive this family? She looked like she was ready to physically attack me. Arthur Sterling frowned, his joy now tainted with doubt. It was, after all, unbelievable. Isabel's heart was in her throat. She looked at me, a flicker of worry in her eyes. I remained calm and simply gestured to the plant. Dr. Finch, please. The professor adjusted his glasses and approached the ghost orchid. He took a long look, an expression of pure admiration on his face. Then he pulled on a pair of white gloves, took out a magnifying lens, and began his examination. He was meticulous, studying everything from the veins on the petals to the texture of the leaves and the composition of the soil. The greenhouse was dead silent. A triumphant smirk was already forming on Caleb's face. For him, the verdict was a foregone conclusion. Slowly, Dr. Finch's expression changed. It went from calm appraisal to serious concentration, then to shock, and finally to utter mind-bending disbelief. He put down his lens and took off his gloves, looking as though all the strength had been drained from his body. Well, Professor, Caleb demanded impatiently. Tell them it's a fake. Dr. Finch didn't even look at him. He looked at me, his eyes wide with a kind of awe reserved for witnessing the impossible. Young man, he whispered, his voice trembling. How in God's name did you do this? Caleb's smile vanished. Professor, what are you talking about? Dr. Finch took a deep breath and turned to the assembled family. I will stake my 30-year professional reputation on this, he said, his voice ringing with conviction. This is, without a single doubt, the original ghost orchid. A collective gasp filled the greenhouse. No, Caleb shrieked. That's impossible. Professor, you must have made a mistake. Or, how much did he pay you? I'll double it. Silence. Dr. Finch roared, his face flushing with anger. Mr. Thorne, you can question my integrity, but you will not question my expertise. The root system of this plant still shows microscopic traces of the rot from yesterday. And yet, its cellular vitality is stronger than any specimen I have ever seen. It defies the laws of biology. This was not done by human hands. This is a work of divine intervention. The more he spoke, the more excited he became. He was no longer looking at me like I was a curiosity, but like I was a messiah. Young man, no, master. Please, you must tell me your methods. This could revolutionize the entire field of botany. Caleb was completely and utterly defeated. The expert he'd hired to expose me had just become my #1 fan. His face turned a mottled shade of red and white. I don't believe it. I don't believe it, he screamed, lunging forward as if to smash the orchid. Stop him, Arthur, Sterling bellowed. 2 bodyguards instantly materialized and seized Caleb, pinning his arms behind his back. Caleb, Isabel's voice was like shattering ice. Have you made enough of a fool of yourself? Get out of my house. Now, held fast by the guards, Caleb's face was a mask of gray despair. He had lost. In front of everyone, he had been utterly humiliated. His schemes had collapsed in the face of an undeniable truth. His eyes, filled with venomous hatred, locked onto me. Leo Vance. This isn't over. I'll get you for this, he snarled as he was dragged away. I knew he would try, and I was waiting for it, because it seemed that every time I used my power, it came back stronger. I needed a catalyst to push my healing forward. And Caleb Thorne was the perfect catalyst. After Caleb was thrown out, a strange atmosphere settled over the greenhouse. Victoria stared, speechless, her gaze flicking between me and the vibrant orchid, her mind clearly unable to process what had just happened. Arthur Sterling, on the other hand, grabbed my hands, his face flushed with excitement. My boy, my dear boy, Leo, you are the guardian angel of this family. He was looking at me now like I was a priceless treasure. The old gardener and Dr. Finch hovered around me like eager students. Master, what kind of fertilizer did you use? Master, do you have some secret grafting technique? I fell back on my flimsy excuse about an old family massage technique for plants. They were skeptical, but didn't dare question me further. Only Isabel stood apart from the group. Her cool, clear eyes were fixed on me, a whirlwind of doubt, shock, and curiosity swirling within them. This man had upended her entire understanding of him, twice in 2 days. First, bringing her grandfather back from the dead, and now, making a dead plant bloom. Could luck and old family techniques really explain all this? She didn't think so. She knew, with absolute certainty, that I was hiding a massive secret. After the orchid incident, my status in the Sterling household underwent a subtle shift. At the very least, the staff no longer looked at me with open contempt. Now, there was a hint of awe, even fear. Victoria still couldn't stand me, but she stopped calling me a loser to my face. Behind my back, she muttered that I was a con artist who'd gotten lucky. I, meanwhile, focused all my energy on cultivating the warmth inside me. I discovered that the energy didn't just heal, it was honing my body. My senses were sharper than they had been even in my Special Forces days. My strength and speed were increasing daily. Most importantly, the dead zone of my body was healing at an astonishing rate. I knew it wouldn't be long before I was fully recovered, stronger than ever before. A few weeks later, Isabel had to attend a major charity gala. As her legal husband, I was expected to accompany her. She had a suit laid out for me. It wasn't a top designer brand, but on my frame, honed by years of intense training, it looked better than any label. When Isabel saw me, a rare flicker of admiration crossed her glacial features. Let's go, she said, quickly regaining her composure. The gala was held at the most exclusive hotel in Westlake City. The moment we arrived, we were the center of attention. The contrast between Isabel's stunning beauty and my reputation as the useless, kept husband was a source of endless fascination. So that's him? He cleans up nice, I guess. Too bad he's all show and no go. Quiet down. I heard he got lucky and somehow saved old man Sterling. Did something with the plant, too? Please. Parlor tricks. Good enough for an old man, maybe. The whispers followed me everywhere. I ignored them. But then, a sarcastic voice cut in from behind us. Well, if it isn't Mr. Vance. Out on the town again, riding our dear Isabel's coattails? I turned. Caleb Thorne. He was flanked by several large men who looked like they broke bones for a living. He had been publicly humiliated at our home, and he was clearly here for revenge. He stared at me, the hatred in his eyes almost a physical force. Leo Vance, you got lucky last time. Let's see who's here to protect you now. He gestured, and his hired muscle moved to surround me, ugly grins on their faces. Caleb, what do you think you're doing? Isabel snapped, her face hardening. What am I doing? Caleb sneered. This doesn't concern you, Isabel. Tonight, in front of the whole city, I'm going to expose this con man for what he is, and maybe teach him a lesson about his place in the world. As he spoke, one of the thugs swung a fist the size of a cinder block at my head. A gasp went through the crowd as people scrambled to get out of the way. Isabel's face went pale. Stop. But it was too late. The fist filled my vision. I didn't move back. I didn't flinch. Just as the knuckles were about to connect with my jaw, I moved. My hand came up impossibly fast and simply caught it. Crack. The sound wasn't loud, but it was sickeningly clear. The thug's punch, strong enough to dent steel, had been stopped cold. Time seemed to hang suspended. The ugly grin on his face froze, then melted into shock and agony. He looked down at his fist, now cradled in my palm, as if he couldn't comprehend what had happened. He felt like he had punched a block of granite. "You," was all he managed to get out. I squeezed. A sharp, wet snap echoed in the quiet room. "Aorg," the man screamed, a high-pitched sound of pure agony, and collapsed to his knees, cradling a hand that was now bent at an unnatural angle. It had all happened in less than a second. The other thug stared for a beat, then roared in fury. "You're dead." They came at me at once, a whirlwind of fists, feet, and elbows. They were professionals, their attacks brutal, and aimed to kill. But to me, they were moving in slow motion, pathetically slow. I moved like a ghost, weaving through their attacks. Every dodge was precise. Every strike was brutally efficient. Thwack! A knife hand to the neck of one man. His eyes rolled back, and he crumpled to the floor. Crack! A palm heel strike to the jaw of another. He spun around twice before collapsing in a heap, spitting out a handful of teeth. Ugh! A knee to the stomach of the last one. He folded like a cheap suit, gasping for air before passing out. It was over in 10 seconds. All 4 of Caleb's heavy hitters were down, unconscious or writhing in pain. I stood in the center of it all, my suit not even wrinkled. The ballroom was utterly silent. Everyone stared at me as if I were a monster. This was the weak, powerless son-in-law. His skill was something out of a movie. Caleb was frozen, his face a mask of disbelief and terror. These weren't street thugs. They were retired MMA fighters, each one a legitimate weapon. And I had dismantled them like they were children. You, he stammered, unable to form a coherent sentence. I started walking toward him, each footstep echoing like a drumbeat in the silent room. Caleb scrambled backward, tripping over his own feet and falling to the floor. "Stay away from me. My father is Marcus Thorne. You touch me, and the Thorne family will destroy you," he shrieked. I stood over him, looking down. "I told you I'd be waiting." My voice was ice. I raised my foot. Just as everyone thought I was about to stomp Caleb into the polished floor, a soft, cool hand grabbed my arm. "Leo, that's enough." I turned. It was Isabel. Her face was a storm of shock and confusion. She had been watching from a few feet away, transfixed. Only now had she snapped out of it. She wasn't pleading for Caleb. She was trying to stop me from doing something in public that we couldn't come back from. I saw the worry in her eyes, and the killing intent inside me subsided. I lowered my foot, but as I turned, chaos erupted. Isabel's young assistant, who had been hiding in the crowd, saw that the thugs were down and rushed forward. In her panic, the heel of her shoe caught on the carpet. With a scream, she pitched forward right at us. It happened in a flash. Isabel's back was to her. There was no time to react. Without a thought, I pulled Isabel into my arms, spinning us around so my back was to the falling assistant. Wham! The impact felt like I'd been hit by a linebacker. I stumbled forward, holding Isabel tight against my chest. She let out a small gasp, her body flush against mine. Soft, warm, and smelling faintly of jasmine. It was the first time we had ever been this close. I could feel her heart hammering against my ribs. My own heart skipped a beat. "Oh my God, Ms. Sterling, I'm so sorry, so sorry," the assistant stammered, scrambling to her feet, her face sheet white with terror. "I'm fine," Isabel said, pulling away from me, a faint blush on her cheeks. She glanced from her terrified assistant to me, her cool eyes turbulent with emotion. In that one moment, when I had shielded her without hesitation, a crack had appeared in the ice around her heart. She had felt for the first time in a long time, completely safe. "Are you okay?" she asked me, her voice laced with a concern she probably didn't even realize was there. "I'm fine," I said, shaking my head. The impact was nothing to my reconditioned body. In fact, the adrenaline from the fight and the sudden shock had caused the energy inside me to surge like a bursting dam. It roared through my veins, a tidal wave of power that slammed against the last vestiges of my old injury. Boom! Something inside me shattered. A feeling of absolute wholeness, of immense power, flooded every cell of my being. I was healed, completely, and I was 10 times stronger than I had ever been before. My face remained impassive, but inside, I was roaring with triumph. By now, the rest of the ballroom had recovered. Caleb, seeing his chance, had already crawled away and vanished. The remaining guests were looking at me with a new expression. Not scorn, but fear. Deep, primal fear. This man wasn't just a skilled fighter. He was a protector. He was dangerous. Was he really the gold-digging loser everyone thought he was? "Who are you?" Back in our suite, the silence was deafening. Isabel finally asked the question that had been burning behind her eyes all night. She stared at me, trying to peel back the layers and see the truth. A man who could heal the dying, resurrect plants, and fight like a demon. That man was not a nobody. I met her gaze. "I'm Leo Vance," I said softly. "Your husband." "That's not what I'm asking." Her voice rose with frustration. "Your skills, your knowledge. None of it makes sense." "I learned it in the army," I said, a half-truth. "The army," she scoffed. "What unit turns out soldiers like you?" "One you don't need to know about," I said, my voice low. "Isabel, all you need to know is that I'm here now, and no one will ever hurt you again." My words hung in the air between us. She stared into my eyes, and her own heartbeat quickened. She opened her mouth to ask more, but I closed the distance between us. Her back hit the cool wall of the suite. She was trapped. What are you doing?" she whispered, her voice trembling slightly. I didn't answer. I leaned in, my eyes fixed on her lips. Her own eyes widened. Her mind went blank. She wanted to push me away, but her body wouldn't respond. I stopped, my lips a mere breath from hers. I could feel her warmth, smell her scent, see the panic and confusion in her beautiful eyes. A slow smile spread across my face. "Good night," I whispered. Then I stepped back, turned, and went to my mattress on the floor. Isabel stood frozen against the wall, her heart racing, her face burning. That bastard. Was he toying with her? For the first time in her 26 years, a man had been so brazen. And the strangest part was, she wasn't disgusted. She was flustered and thrilled. That night, Isabel Sterling did not sleep. The next day, the unthinkable happened. Marcus Thorne, Caleb's father and the CEO of Thorne Industries, arrived at the Sterling mansion bearing extravagant gifts. The first thing he did was force his son to kneel in the center of the grand foyer. "You worthless brat, apologize to Mr. Vance and Ms. Sterling now," Marcus roared, kicking his son in the back. Caleb, his face a mask of sullen fury, mumbled, "Mr. Vance, Ms. Sterling, I am sorry. I was out of line." Victoria and Arthur were stunned. The Thornes were a powerful family. Marcus Thorne was notoriously arrogant and protective of his only son. Why was he here, performing this humiliating ritual of apology? "Marcus, what is all this?" Arthur asked, completely bewildered. Marcus Thorne forced a smile that looked more like a grimace. "Arthur, my friend, it is my failure as a father. This boy overstepped his bounds. I've already half killed him for it. I brought him here today to be at Mr. Vance's disposal. His posture was deferential. More than that, it was fearful. Everyone could see it. Marcus Thorne was afraid of me. But why? So I could fight? That shouldn't be enough to terrify a man like him. Only I knew the truth. After the gala, I had sent Marcus Thorne a single text message from a burner phone. It contained just 4 words. Ghost Talon, Alpha 7. Only a handful of people in the country knew what that designation meant. It was the name of the most elite, most secret, and most lethal special operations unit in the United States military. And I, Leo Vance, had been Alpha 7. Marcus Thorne had made some of his early fortune through shady arms deals near conflict zones. He had, on one occasion, witnessed the aftermath of a Ghost Talon operation. The memory had haunted him ever since. When he saw that name on his phone, he had nearly had a heart attack. He couldn't believe that the man his son had tried to destroy was one of those legendary, unstoppable phantoms. 1 Thorne Industries was nothing against that kind of power. 10 Thorne Industries were nothing. That won't be necessary, I said calmly. Just make sure it never happens again. Yes, of course. I swear it. Marcus nodded frantically. If he ever bothers you or your wife again, I will break his legs myself. He then hauled his son to his feet and practically ran out of the house. The foyer was silent. Victoria and Arthur stared at me like I was an alien. A few words in a text message had brought Marcus Thorne to his knees. Who had their daughter married? Isabel was just as shocked, her eyes burning with curiosity. Ghost Talon, Alpha 7? What did it mean? Just then my phone rang. A blocked, encrypted number. I stepped away to answer it. A gruff, powerful voice I hadn't heard in 3 years came through the line. All right, kid, playtime's over. It's time to come home. That voice. My blood ran cold. It was the old man. My former CO. The man who had pulled me out of the wreckage of my old life and forged me into the deadliest operator in Ghost Talon. 3 years ago, after that final mission where I'd swallowed the bead, my body had gone haywire. I'd had no choice but to resign my commission and disappear. We hadn't spoken since. How'd he find me? Sir, I asked, my voice tight. So you still remember me, he said, a hint of amusement in his tone. You've been making a hell of a lot of noise in Westlake City, Leo. Raising the dead, fighting in public. You think I wouldn't hear about it? So, he'd been watching me all along. Is there a mission? I asked, cutting to the chase. Smart kid, he said, his voice turning serious. Remember that last stop? The dig? The thing we pulled out of that tomb? We have a problem. The tomb. The place where I'd found the bead. My heart sank. What kind of problem? The bronze sarcophagus we brought back. It started emitting some kind of energy field a few weeks ago. Every scientist who gets near it suffers from changes, genetic mutations. Some have died. We think it's connected to what happened to you, to the abilities you now have. He paused. We need you back, Leo. You might be the only one who can figure this out, the only one who can control it. I was silent. Go back. Back to that world of blood and shadows. I glanced back into the foyer. Isabel was watching me, her face etched with concern. Sometime over the last few weeks, this woman had carved out a space in my heart. I wasn't alone anymore. I had something to lose. I need to think about it, I said. You have 3 days, the old man said. After that, I'll be at the old safe house. And Leo, this is a matter of national security. The line went dead. My mind was a battlefield. On one side, my duty, my country. On the other, my wife, this new life I was just beginning to build. Is everything okay? Isabel asked, walking over to me. I looked at her and felt the overwhelming urge to tell her everything. But the world of Ghost Talon was too dark, too violent. I couldn't drag her into it. It's nothing. Just an old friend, I lied. She didn't believe me. She looked at my troubled expression, then did something that stunned me. She reached out and took my hand. Hers was soft and cool, but it sent a jolt of warmth through my entire body. Leo, she said, her gaze steady and serious. I don't know what you've been through. I don't know what secrets you're carrying, but I know you're my husband. And whatever it is, we'll face it together. Her words hit me like a physical blow. I looked into her clear, determined eyes, and all my doubt and conflict vanished. I squeezed her hand. Okay. Suddenly, Victoria screamed, pointing a trembling finger at the large television in the living room. Look, the news. We all turned. A breaking news report had interrupted the regular programming. We have breaking news from a developing situation at the Sterling Biomedical Research Facility on the outskirts of the city. Sources are reporting a major containment breach involving an experimental agent codenamed the Revenant Protocol. The entire facility is under lockdown. Details are still coming in. The live helicopter shot showed the facility engulfed in smoke and fire. When I saw the name of the lab, my blood turned to ice. That was it. That was the classified facility the old man had told me about. The one holding the sarcophagus. It was too late. Boom! A massive explosion rocked the facility, the sound roaring even through the TV speakers. The camera feed shook violently, filled with the sounds of screaming and automatic gunfire, before cutting to static. The living room was deathly silent. Victoria looked like she was about to faint. Arthur was pale and grim. "Leo," Isabel whispered, her grip on my hand tightening. My face was a thundercloud. The Revenant Protocol? A containment breach? This was no accident. The thing from the sarcophagus was out. BZZZT. BZZZT. My phone vibrated violently. It was the old man. I answered instantly. "Leo," he yelled, his voice frantic over a cacophony of gunfire. "We've lost containment. The thing inside woke up. It infected the staff. They're turning into monsters. The perimeter is about to break." "Sir, what is it? What's inside?" I roar back. "They're necroparasites. Some kind of ancient organism. They burrow into a host, take over the nervous system, turn them into mindless killing machines. I heard him cry out in pain, followed by a heavy thud, and then silence. Sir, I yelled into the phone, but there was no answer. My world tilted on its axis. The old man was down. "I have to go," I said, my voice hoarse. "No," Isabel said instantly. "It's too dangerous. You can't." "I have to," I said, turning to her, my eyes blazing with a resolve she couldn't argue with. "My team is in there. My responsibility is in there." "But, Isabel," I said, grabbing her by the shoulders. "Trust me, I will come back." Then I turned and ran. "Leo," she screamed after me. I didn't look back. I sprinted out of the mansion, jumped into the most nondescript sedan in the garage, and floored it, tearing toward the outskirts of the city. The air was filled with sirens. The entire city was mobilizing. 20 minutes later, I reached the military cordon around the facility. It was a war zone. Soldiers were in a desperate firefight with things that were once human. Pale skin, red eyes, moving with terrifying speed and strength, shrugging off bullet wounds as they swarmed the barricades. The infected, exactly as the old man had described. "Halt! This is a restricted military zone," 2 soldiers yelled, leveling their rifles at me. I didn't waste words. I pulled a black titanium card from my wallet. Stamped on it was a stylized Hawk's Talon and a short alphanumeric code. Ghost Talon, Alpha 7. I'm assuming command. The soldiers' eyes went wide when they saw the emblem. They snapped to attention. "Sir." "Yes, sir." "Situation report. Where's the command post?" I yelled, running toward the front line. "It's bad, sir. We're being overrun. General Miller is in that armored personnel carrier." I sprinted to the APC and threw open the door. A 1-star general was screaming into a radio. "Hold the line. I don't care what it takes. Nothing gets out." He looked up as I entered. "Who the hell are you?" I flashed the ID. The general's eyes nearly popped out of his head. He shot to his feet and saluted. "Commander Vance, what are you doing here?" He knew me. "Forget that. Where's the old man?" I snatched a pair of binoculars from his desk and scanned the burning facility. The general's face fell. "Sir," he was covering the evacuation of the research data. "He's trapped inside. In the central lab." My world stopped for a second. Trapped in the heart of the nightmare. "Where is the central lab?" I snarled. "Sub-level 3 of the main research building," the general said, pointing. "But, sir, it's completely overrun. We sent in 3 elite fire teams. We lost contact with all of them. It was a death trap. Give me a weapon, ammo, and a full tactical suit," I said, dropping the binoculars. "Sir, you can't," the general protested. "It's a suicide mission." "Suicide?" I gave him a cold, hard smile. "General, I don't do suicide missions. I do cleanup." My stare silenced him. He saw in my eyes the man he had only heard stories about. The unstoppable phantom of Ghost Talon. Without another word, he barked orders into his radio. 5 minutes later, I was geared up. The best armor, the best rifle, and a pack full of explosives. I stood at the edge of the barricade, looking into hell. "Godspeed, Commander," General Miller said, saluting my back. Every soldier on the line paused to watch me. I took a deep breath, and the powerful energy inside me surged, flooding my body with strength I'd never known. Then I moved. I vaulted the barricade, a black blur moving against the tide of retreating soldiers, charging headfirst into the land of the dead. Roar! Dozens of the infected turned, their red eyes fixing on the fresh meal that had just been delivered. They swarmed me. I raised my rifle and opened fire. D-D-A-D-D-D-A. A stream of bullets cut through the horde, each one finding a home in a monster's skull. Headshot, after headshot, after headshot. With my enhanced senses, their lightning-fast movements were like a slow dance of death. I moved through them like a wraith, a machine of perfect violence, carving a path of destruction straight toward the main building. I kicked into shattered glass doors and plunged into the darkness, drawing the twin combat knives from my back. Close quarters. This is what I was made for. Flashes of steel in the dark. The wet sound of blades cutting through flesh. I was a whirlwind of death, clearing the way to my only objective. Sublevel 3. The central lab. The old man. I found the entrance. It was eerily quiet. The bodies of the Special Forces teams were strewn across the floor, torn to pieces. Something worse was in here. I pushed open the heavy blast door. It was a vast, circular chamber. In the center sat the open bronze sarcophagus. A single, elderly figure stood before it, his back to me. The old man. "Sir," I called out, relief flooding through me. He didn't answer. He just turned, slowly. His face was covered in a web of pulsating black veins. His eyes were solid red, and in the center of his chest, where his heart should be, there was a gaping, bloody hole. Clinging to the wound was a black, beetle-like creature with razor-sharp legs, pulsing as it fed. The necroparasite. He had been infected. The man who was like a father to me. The hero who had saved my life. He was one of them. Roar! The thing wearing my commander's face launched itself at me, moving faster than anything I had ever seen. The hands that had once guided me now clawed for my throat. I dodged, but not fast enough. The claws raked across my chest, shredding my body armor and tearing 5 deep gashes in my flesh. The pain was excruciating. "Sir, wake up. It's me. It's Leo," I screamed, hoping to reach the man inside. The only answer was a fresh wave of attacks, a brutal, relentless assault using the very combat techniques he had taught me. I could only dodge, backpedaling, unable to bring myself to fight back. I couldn't hurt him. My hesitation cost me. A blow caught me in the shoulder, sending me flying into a concrete wall. I collapsed, coughing up blood. As he stalked toward me, I felt despair wash over me. This was it. This was how I was going to die. But then, something happened. The energy inside me, drawn to my wound, roared to life. It wasn't a gentle warmth anymore. It was a searing, golden fire, erupting from the bead in my core and engulfing my entire body in an inferno of power. The infected old man lunged for the final kill. This time I didn't dodge. My eyes burned with a terrible resolve. I thrust my right hand forward, and the golden energy coalesced in my palm, causing it to glow. I met his claws with my open hand. There was no sound of impact, only a high-pitched sizzling. The moment my glowing palm touched him, the golden energy erupted into a cleansing fire, consuming his body. A scream tore from his throat, but it wasn't a scream of rage. It was a scream of release. The parasite on his chest shrieked as it was vaporized into ash. The black veins on his face receded. The red in his eyes faded, replaced by the familiar, clear gaze of my commander. Tears streamed down his weathered face. "Leo, my boy, well done." With his last breath, his body went limp, and he collapsed into my arms. The wound in his chest was too great. His heart was gone. Nothing could have saved him. "Sir," I screamed, cradling his body, my heart shattering into a million pieces. 6 months later, Westlake City had healed. The official story was a gas line explosion at the biomedical facility. A tragedy quickly forgotten. At the Sterling mansion, I stood in the back garden, watering the ghost orchid. It was thriving. I turned and saw Isabel walking toward me across the lawn. She wore a simple white sundress, and the smile on her face outshone the sun. She came to my side and linked her arm through mine. It felt like the most natural thing in the world. "What are you thinking about?" she asked softly. "Just thinking how beautiful my wife is," I said, leaning down to kiss her forehead. She blushed, but didn't pull away. The day I walked out of that lab, carrying the old man's body, I became a national hero. They offered me medals, promotions, a new command. I turned it all down. I retired. For good. I had made a promise to the old man to live a full life for both of us. And I had made a promise to a woman to protect her for the rest of mine. "By the way," Isabel said, her face turning a deeper shade of pink as she looked down at her feet, "my mother suggested that it might be time for you to move your things into the master bedroom." I stared at her for a second, then burst out laughing. I scooped her up into my arms, and she let out a surprised yelp, wrapping her arms around my neck. "As you wish, Mrs. Vance," I said, carrying her toward the house. The sun was warm, the breeze was gentle. Our new life, the real one, was just beginning. As for the secrets of the bead and the golden energy still flowing through my veins, we would have a lifetime to figure those out. Together. And